Hello, my name is Patricia Noel Drain, and my podcast is Women Entrepreneurs Over 50. They want to make a difference while they're making an income and making an impact, doing exactly what they love. Well, let me tell you, I don't know what I would have done without Kim helping me for the past 3 years. She helps me edit, she helps upload, and she even makes sure that the titles I use are SEO appropriate. Don't walk, run. Hire Kim for your podcast team today.
Here's the thing. You've been teaching from your podcast every single week. Every solo episode, every guest conversation, and every story you've shared, you've been your listener's teacher. And most of you have never thought once of it that way. I want you to think about the last episode you recorded. What did your listeners actually walk away knowing? What changed for them? Their mindset, their strategy, their next move. Because let's face it, they spent a good 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes with you. And if you're wondering, what is it that I taught in the last episode? Then today we're going to unpack that because I sent out last week an episode with Renee Koster. That was episode 064. She's a learning experience designer and strategist. And she said something that I just can't stop thinking about. She said she starts every learning experience with the transformation she wants the learner to have. And then she builds backwards from there. That is like gold, right? And honestly, that's exactly what most of us are not doing with our podcast episodes. Sometimes we're just throwing an episode out there willy-nilly, or we think we have some kind of a direction on where we're going, but then maybe it falls flat and maybe we're not actually doing the teaching part. We have the listeners, we have the people that want to follow, but then we're finding that we're just not delivering that teaching experience in a clear and concise way. You are listening to Kim Parkinson, and this is Podcasting for Your Spiritual Business. And I'm going to actually walk you through a simple 5-part framework that I created right after Renee's episode went live, because I really needed to kind of understand this in a podcasting direction. Now, Renee and I are in a cohort together, and so we're really friendly. We've worked together on a couple of different projects, and I absolutely love what she's doing. And I love being a teacher myself. If you aren't aware, I used to own a brick and mortar craft store. And during that time, I was teaching anywhere from like 8 to 20 more classes per month to women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And basically, what I was doing was teaching them crafts and confidence at the same time. Every time I helped guide them to what colors to use on their art, or what medium to use, or how to do placement, they were then getting that creative muscle going. And that creative muscle created more creative muscle. And the more you use your creativity, the more you become confident in it. So, confidence coach, I was and have been for, oh my gosh, honestly, I started teaching crafts in 2004. So it has been, oh my gosh, 12 years, 22 years that I have been teaching confidence. And while I don't teach crafts anymore, I do still teach confidence. So here's what nobody is talking about when it comes to podcasting for your spiritual business. Most of us start our podcast with vibes, with flow, with, okay, I know what we want to talk about. Let me just hit record and see where this goes. And I also know that many of you are using similar frameworks to what I talked about in 053, where you are maybe downloading all of your information into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and then you're getting a more succinct outline and then going for your podcast episode by using the outline. I also know that there is a whole bunch of you that are not using AI, and you're just kind of hitting record and seeing where it goes. And you know what? Whichever way that you do that, there's no wrong way. There is a real magic in speaking from a place of genuine knowing and passion. And that is what I always say. I always want you to be the person that is getting your true voice out there. You're getting your knowledge out there. But here's the part that is going to cost us if we're not planning ahead. And I talk about this because I talk about batching, which is also planning ahead, right? So when we lead with what we want to say, instead of what the listener needs to walk away with, that episode is going to maybe not be the follow through that you want it to be for your listener. Episodes can feel really good about what it is that you're recording, but maybe no one is moving on to the next step. You're not fully teaching, you're not fully sending them to the next step. And that is really where I'm seeing a lot of podcasters kind of fall into over and over again. They're just not getting to the point where they're succinctly teaching and then giving that call to action. So here's a couple of ideas on this, right? So number one, it's information dumping. This is when you cover everything you know about one topic. And I have absolutely been known to fire hose people about this. I've actually done this to someone more recently where instead of giving them a clear outline on how to start a podcast, I just totally fire hose them, being like, here's everything and let's go. It's because I'm knowledgeable, I'm passionate, I'm generous, I'm all of those things. And I want to give everything to everyone. But the problem is if you are doing that, your episode's going to be like 45 minutes long. Your listeners are going to be really overwhelmed and they're not going to know where to start. This is why I often say to you, only give them one CTA per episode. It's not always going to be a transformation if you fire hose them with a ton of information. They're just going to be really stuck. That is, again, why I often say when you do a podcast guesting, give them one episode to go back to. Just give them the number of the episode and let the listener start there because you've taken away the decision. People nowadays have so many decisions to make that they don't want any more decisions. And so by not information dumping and by giving them the one clear action works perfect, right? So now again, here's another thought here is that you don't have any kind of through line, right? This is when your episode is fine, it's good even, but at the end, if someone asked your listeners what they learned today, they might say something vague like, "Oh, it was inspiring," which is lovely, which is fantastic, but inspiring doesn't drive action and it maybe doesn't instill the trust that you're trying to build with your listeners. So inspiring isn't converting. It's just making them say, "Oh, that was nice. Maybe I'll listen to next week's." And we don't want that. We want them to come back week after week. Listeners who don't have a clear takeaway, they're not coming back and they're not going to share that episode. And they don't really feel ready to take any kind of next step because if you're confusing them, then what are they going to do? They're not going to book. They're not going to join your program because they're like, "Oh my gosh, she's too much." And they may not even stay in your world. And we don't want that either. So that is actually exactly why when I was listening back to Renee's episode, her whole approach, whether she's designing a course, a membership, or a group program, she starts with that transformation first. What do you want your learners to have at the end? And then every single element that builds backwards from that answer. And these are multiple episodes or single episodes. Don't think of them as you have to do multiple for this learning experience. I say every episode should cover one topic, and that one topic then should just be talked about. Don't talk about multiple topics. Don't talk about multiple things like that. What ends up happening is, again, just confusion. And confusion does not move that needle. People don't like to walk away and go, "What the heck did she just talk about?" No, they don't like that. So let me just ask you, right? When people finish your episode, what is the transformation that they're having? for that one episode. And every episode's going to be different, I think, right? Every episode could be different. Maybe they're the same depending on what you're talking about. If you can name what that transformation is in one sentence after each episode, amazing. If you're saying, I'm not even sure what that was, then let me help you along with the new framework that I just came up with. And again, this is brand spanking new. So it's not anywhere else right now, but it's definitely going into my coaching programs and into my teaching programs because I do feel really powerful about this. And it's easy. All right. It's 5 letters, teach, TEACH. Once you hear it, you're going to start applying it before every single episode because this is so easy now, right? Okay, so T is for transformation first. Before you open your mouth to record a single word, you need to know the one thing your listeners will know, feel, or be able to do differently by the time the episode ends. Just one thing. We don't want 3, 5, 10, whatever. One. If you feel so inclined, you can write that down as a sentence, something along the lines of, after listening to this episode, my listener will understand why their podcast episodes aren't converting and have a framework to fix it. Yeah, that's me today. That's going to be your anchor. Every story, every example, every point you make in that episode should be pushing them towards that outcome. If it doesn't serve the transformation, then rethink about this, right? Rethink about whether or not it should be inside of that episode. All right, that was T. And so E is for entry point. This is where you meet your listeners where they are, not where you wish they were. What belief are they walking in with? What struggles are they carrying? What questions are already spinning in their head when they press play? These are the pieces that you want to think about because you really want to understand them so that when they listen, their first reaction is, yes, that's it. She gets me. She understands me. Okay. So A is for action. And I thought about this. We want action always, right? We always want to move that needle. Here's where most of us get this wrong. We think our job as a podcast host is to inform, is to give information. And yes, information is part of it, but Renee made a point in the episode 64 that I want you to kind of like write down somewhere, put it on a Post-it note, put it somewhere where you can read it. She said the goal isn't to fill your learner up, it's to move them forward. A is for action. Every single point in your episode should connect to a shift, a decision, or your next move. Action over information every time. Okay. C, I'm going to say it. C is for chunking. I know it's a silly word. So Renee actually used this word in our conversation. So it kind of like, it was there, but I was like, it's not a Kim word, but I get it. I get it. So I'm going to steal it. Chunking means breaking your episodes into clear, digestible segments rather than one long flowing stream of thought, right? In every single episode, whether it's a 10-minute episode, a 30-minute episode, your listener's attention naturally ebbs and flows. They have things to do. Maybe they're not paying attention every single second. You know, they're pulling a weed or they are walking the dog, doing the dishes, whatever they're doing. They are not always going to be listening to every word. Again, this is why I think repetition is key. That's another episode. But I just want you to just think before you hit record, because when you are chunking your episodes and keeping it so that there are some digestible pieces to the flow, it's going to keep you on track, right? This is another reason why I use those outlines, why I give everything that I want to talk about. And then I get an outline back that says, you should talk about this first, you should talk about that for next and onward. Because again, it keeps me on task, but it also keeps you in a flow where you can understand what I'm talking about easily. It will just give your listeners some natural moments to kind of absorb what you're saying. But at the same time, if they're not understanding it, you've moved on and you're kind of repeating what you're talking about. Here is the kind of the cool part about the whole chunking idea. Currently, right now, Apple Podcast is auto-generating chapter markers. Now, you can create chapter markers within your hosting platform, but If you want, go ahead and look in Apple Podcasts and you'll see those chapter markers being created for each of your episodes. You can change them again within your hosting if you wanted to rename them something differently, but Apple is already kind of creating that chunking part for you, which is nice. All right. So lastly is H for handoff. This is the one most people completely forget. Your episode needs to end somewhere, not just stop, right? Not just end without any kind of CTA. Every episode should close with one clear next step for your listener. Maybe it is the related episodes, like I've mentioned here, that will go deeper. Or maybe it's your newsletter. Maybe it's a strategy session. Maybe it's your course. Maybe, I did an entire episode on CTAs a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it's one of those, right? There's many different CTAs that you can have, but it has to be just one thing. What is that one thing that you're going to send them to? So teach. T is for transformation. E is for entry point. A is for action. C is for chunking, and H is for handoff. That's it. That's your framework. That is your pre-recording checklist. And that's how you turn a good episode into a learning experience your listeners actually remember and want to come back for. Yeah. So your podcast isn't just content. It is also a marketing tool. We know that it's not just a place where you talk and hope people show up and listen. It's a learning experience that your listeners are opting into every single time they press play. They're trusting you with their time. They're trusting you with their attention, and they're also trusting you with their growth, whether that's personal, business, or whatever it is that you teach, right? Whatever your podcast is about. And when you design your episodes with that kind of intention, knowing what they're coming there for, with transformation first, with a clear entry point, with action, with chunking, with a purposeful handoff, then your show becomes something they want to come back to. They don't want to miss that next episode because they know every week they're going to learn something new. They're going to learn something, or they're going to be reinforced that learning. And that is when your podcast stops becoming background noise and it really starts to help people change their business, their life. And what better feeling is that than to know that somebody has been helped by the power of your voice? I simply love it. And that's why I come back every week. If you want to go even deeper on this, and honestly, again, this is what I deliver every single week, but I also always invite you to my newsletter. Please go kpcreativmedia.com/newsletter, sign up, and every week I'm going to send you some more tips and tricks on more podcasting. Sometimes it's just about a tool. Sometimes it's about client episodes. Maybe it's about episodes I've listened to from other people, and I really feel like they're moving and they need to be out there in the world more. So I always give you some tips and frameworks behind the scenes, whatever, all of that right there. And the link is in my bio, but again, it's kpcreativmedia.com/newsletter. Until next time, where your voice flows, your business grows. This is Kim Parkinson, and you've been listening to Podcasting for Your Spiritual Business. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me today. If you're ready to deepen your visibility and grow your podcast in a way that feels aligned, come join my email list at kpcreativmedia.com/newsletter, where I share exclusive guidance, support, and next steps. And if this episode resonated, I'd be so honored if you left a review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the most powerful ways to support the show and help other spiritual women discover it. Until next time, keep showing up and sharing your voice.